All right, now I'm planning on finishing this up for real. There's always going to be more things I see, but I'm at a low opacity now, only 48%. I could even go lower as I'm making these final observations about value and form, about color, and about what the level of finish needs to be to not distract from the other parts that I think are working well. Always looking at the navigator, looking at it from a distance, and trying to cut myself a little slack too. This is always something I can return to. I'm going to save it as a PSD file. I don't need to solve every issue in order to turn in a good assignment. So where can I best use the efforts? Let me just finish off the shirt. Do this little shape here. And then I'm going to use the eraser. Actually, no, I'm going to paint on this layer. I'm going to paint with the gray and on this soft edge on the outside. Going to kind of cut into it a little bit. So how do you finish off? You worry about your outside edges. The edges that either interact with the background or with just the blankness. So because I did all those kind of flattening tricks and bringing in different types, and I like this lighter gray, not a middle gray anymore, that allows me to soften these edges, just painting with that gray at this low opacity. Shape the ear a little bit. Shape the back of the neck. Just make everything feel intentional, feel considered, all the way through, as much as possible. Kind of squint and check your highlights. And I'm proud of myself because I haven't zoomed in much at all for this. And it's so tempting. But honestly, you get more done if you kind of work from the big picture on out instead of from details alone. All right. Okay, so once you feel you have reached a finish that you are happy with, of course, you're going to notice things you want to change. And once you're able to resist that urge, then we're going to save it as a PSD file. That's for you to work with. And then you're going to notice other things you want to change. And this can go on for a while. This is why we have deadlines. And you can comfort yourself by saying, well, yeah, maybe I didn't do everything I wanted to do before I finished, but a lot has been done. Ooh. At every step. Okay, so you're going to save it. You're going to also save your most dominant photo reference. So this is the one I tended to lean on the most, for sure. And even though I started out wanting to be and intending to be really experimental with my colors, by nature of observing and painting, it took all of those colors to get something that pretty much approximates the skin tones and the lighting of the photo to begin with. It's a little more yellow, which I like. All right. Then you're going to save. So I'll save first the photo reference to the desktop. And then you're going to save your painting as a JPEG. And the big difference is you want to make sure it's saved to the desktop as a JPEG after you've saved it as a Photoshop file. As a Photoshop file, it's 1.71 gigabytes large. So I want to make sure that this is no more than 5 megabytes when I put it onto PhotoBucket. That's why we use JPEG, so we can really control that. And then, of course, you notice something like this kind of reddish line that's going through. You modify that. It just never ends. Okay, then, if you want to, you can really experiment and push something really far. So once I have that JPEG saved on the desktop, oh, I think I saved the wrong one. It's annoying. So let's do this. Save as. Make sure you save the right things to the desktop as JPEGs. There, I've got that one. Now I'll save this one. That's not the right one. This one. That's why I don't like to have multiple things open. It's always helpful to have your name in the assignment file name. There we go. There it is. So once you have it as a JPEG, you might decide to open that JPEG up in Photoshop. This is completely optional. This is some fun you could have even after the assignment. And once the JPEG is opened in Photoshop, then you can play with filters, adjustments, other changes. I want to show you one that I think is really interesting. You go to Filter Gallery. It's important to run this on the JPEG instead of the PSD because it will process in a lot less time. And you can use the halftone pattern filter. Ooh, look at that. But that's not what I want to show you. Under Artistic, Plastic Wrap. It's one of my favorites. Not because it really looks like plastic wrap, though I get where they get that name, but because it looks like melted wax to me. And it really does look like melted wax. To the point where it's kind of unsettling. So you can play with your highlight strength, the amount of detail, the smoothness. Sometimes because we created all of these pixels ourselves, it can be pretty fun just to see what the computer can do with them. Unfortunately, it's really blasting out the eye, because to make it look like plastic wrap, it puts a highlight right in the middle. There's probably a way I can shift where that highlight is. But I don't want to deal with it right now. So that's without, and that's with. Look what it does to the shirt. That's kind of cool. So if all else fails, you can make it look like you did a melted crayon drawing. You could try some of these other techniques like dry brush. And as long as you use these very intentionally, with a lot of integrity to kind of make sure it's your own work. See, that just kind of softens everything a little bit. Though I was already using a soft brush. You can play with it. So that looks a little bit more like watercolor. though maybe it doesn't have all the diversity that my actual strokes had. Other options. So if you find something you really like that's just really, really different, let's try the watercolor filter. You can submit that to as a third. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to PhotoBucket. Put this up under the instructor demonstrations for assignment 9, and we're going to do the peer critique, presentation critique in a few minutes. Oh, what happened to Screencast-O-Matic? It's gone. Oh, there it is. All right. Yeah, so let's see watercolor. And so you should derive some satisfaction from working so long on something. Now you can play with those pixels as though they were just ones you composited. So I can kind of put this kind of charcoal drawing over the top of it. And I kind of like that. And this is all coming from your work. Doesn't mean it's the right way to go. It's something you can play with. And that's why we do it on a JPEG instead, right? And then, right before you shut it down, you'll notice other things you can fix. Something glaring that you're just shocked you didn't see before. Shocked! It's going to make all the difference in the world. And then you're going to save it. And then you're going to upload it. And then your life will be wonderful. As long as PhotoBucket works. So we'll deal with that problem. Okay. And that is it. Let's see, why is that one open? Close it. You can even just submit some of your experiments with preview, right? So these are the two things you're required to submit to fulfill the requirements of the assignment. Your reference and your painting. And then other things you might try are some other experiments, things like that. That looks a little like Bill Cosby. I just noticed that. Something like that. And so once you have your digital painting, you can push it in all these different directions. And you can play with more abstraction. You can play with, compositing and more experimentation. Different filters and techniques. That one's actually pretty interesting. And that might work better from a distance. And try to, congratulate yourselves for trying something new. All right.